Welcome to the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. Each week, we bring you discussions with educators on how they use blended, self-paced, and mastery-based learning to better serve their students. We believe teachers learn best from each other, so this is our way of lifting up the voices of leaders and innovators in our community. This is the Modern Classrooms Project podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. My name is Tony Rose Deanna and they them pronouns, a designated hype person here at MCP, and I am joined by Saenovia Smith, a kindergarten teacher who is not just talking about it, but being about it, which I absolutely love on your bio. I think that is so rad. Welcome, Saenovia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a joy and a pleasure to be here as well.
Yes. And again, it's just so exciting to be in this space with you. I've heard great things. And so I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more and just being able to elevate your story for everyone to listen to. And so before we get started, what is bringing you joy currently?
What brings me joy? God brings me joy. My family brings me joy. Within the classroom, my students bring me joy. Also, technology, and with this newfound love for the Modern Classroom Project, that also brings me joy.
Oh, so there's so many things that's bringing you joy right now, and that makes me really happy to hear. I do love the fact that you really prioritize and highlight your faith as well, and so thank you for bringing that in and just being as authentically as you can be in this space, so thank you. Saenovia, let's first of all, I love your name. Tell us more about who you are and how you started your MCP journey.
Well, for me, I'm an enthusiastic kindergarten teacher who always strives to create an engaging and effective learning environment for my students. As far as my journey with the Modern Classroom Project, it began at the end of the 2023-2024 school year. So when the idea was presented to me through the district, I decided to dive right in because I felt like, hey, this sounds wonderful. How can I be a part? So with me just diving right into it, I started implementing the modern classroom design while I was still going through the course. So in me doing that, I was able to experiment with and refine the setup. So by the time the new school year began, I was fully prepared to introduce the new design to my students and their parents from day one. So I think that that approach was proactive because it helped both myself and the students become comfortable with the new system. And it's been amazing to see my students adapt, grow, and thrive in that environment.
When you were going through our virtual mentorship program, right, did you have any kind of hesitation or kind of like oh no, how am I going to do that for my kindergartners?
So I just paid attention to what the design was all about. And basically, I felt like it was necessary, especially for the type of students that we have in this day and age. Technology is and social media and the attention spans, even with myself, just with TikTok and everything, just that little short period of time that you spend and are engaged. I felt like because how advanced the students are, I felt like it was a great program for them to for me to implement it within my classroom.
That's really awesome that you were just able to say okay, this connects with everything that's happening now, and this actually is still okay and even better, right, for little kids. Yeah. And I also like the self-reflection that you did too of just the attention span, right? I always say as an adult, my attention span is also questionable. Yeah. And so for me to have an expectation for people who are younger than me to have better attention span than me, it's just not, it's not feasible at all. Right. And so, okay, yeah, this is great. What kind of technology do you use in the classroom, especially with kindergartners?
Okay, so currently we operate using the iPad. That's one huge factor in the design of the Modern Classroom Project. And then we also use the ViewSonic board And then there are different apps that are applied to that iPad that we use within the classroom. I also use like different like timers. Um, there's something called an Elmo uh, that I use to show modeling for my students if necessary. Well, modeling is always necessary, but if I need to use that Elmo, that is something that I will use also.
So, okay, this is great to hear. I've never heard of Elmo before, so that's like a new thing that I definitely would love to check out for myself. I am also curious, and I'm sure our listeners are also curious. Let's paint a picture of your classroom. How many students do you have? What are some supports that you're providing for students as well? And then when it comes to iPads, do students get time to practice getting on the iPad, or how does that look?
So currently, well, initially it started, I had 21 students, and currently I have 19 students. Within the classroom, there are stations. So since day one, students were introduced to the modern classroom project. They were introduced to stations. They were introduced to the systems within the classroom, the operation, where they should go. As far as iPads and them being able to jump right on, I did get background knowledge on any students that did know how to operate the iPad. So with those students that were able to operate iPad that had experience with it, they were big help to other students. So it's real easy. Our school district has QR codes, which allows the students to scan in. So they love the camera. So I just taught them about just how to turn that camera on, taught them about the platforms that we had, and they would use their badges to scan in order to get into the different programs that we use within the classroom.
And how long would you say that it took for them to get that routine down?
I'm gonna say I would give it like a month of consistent operation. So the whole month it took for them to continue on with the routine, and then after that month, they were able to run the classroom themselves.
I really love this concept that you mentioned too, of doing kind of a background knowledge based on who has experience with iPads and who doesn't, and then them being able to collaborate and help each other out and learn from each other, right? Because then it doesn't just have to be on you. So I really love that, and I think it's a nice reminder too for teachers of all ages that collaboration can happen and that they can continue learning from each other. Um, So, okay, well, you talked a little bit about your routines, and I know that my colleague Emily Dia just raved about your systems and routines in your classroom, definitely gave you a shout out in our team. And so I'm really curious, tell us more about them, because you did kind of, give us a glimpse of what those routines could look like, and then how you got your kindergartners to embrace them in a month.
Yeah. So within my classroom, in order for the students to thrive, I believe as a teacher, you definitely have to have like systems and routines because they are essential. So for my students, all I had to do was introduce clear and simple, consistent routines that they could easily follow, and made sure that I started them on day one. For example, we have designated areas for different activities, and I use a lot of visual aids to help guide the students through their tasks. I also implemented a system of check-ins and check-outs where students can self-assess their progress and seek help if they needed to. There are designated students in the classroom that are called Ask Me students. So with this whole design, it gives me the opportunity to work within my small groupings, as well as to really work with students one-on-one. So those Ask Me students are students that are on track. They are they have showed mastery, and whatever the concept was or the standard that we're working on. So those students are the students that are within each student group, and they ask those Ask Me students for help when I'm working within a group. If those Ask Me students don't know, there is one super Ask Me student that they can go to prior to me, before they come to me. So they would ask that super Ask Me student. If that super Ask Me student does not know, then that super Ask Me student would come and ask for help from me. Um, they're able to articulate and help each other with collaboration. They're very helpful within the classroom with one another. They talk to one another all the time. And any type of noise levels within the classroom, it's good noise levels because they're learning and they're practicing and they're helping each other. So to help my students embrace those routines, I spend a lot of time modeling and practicing each routine with them. So we also had discussions. We have discussions about why these routines are important, which help them to understand their purpose and value. And the key was to make the routines fun and engaging so that the students felt motivated to follow them. Since the students are so young and energetic, I felt like the idea was ideal for them to be active and engaged at a station for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then once that time was up, it was time to work on to something new. Don't get me wrong, it did take time for them to develop that stamina to stay at their stations for 15 minutes. I had to start off small with about 5 minutes, and then they were able to build that stamina up until 15 minutes, even going up to the max of 20 minutes, depending on the content that's being taught. So as a teacher in an ever-evolving world, like I was saying, we have to keep up with the times. Technology plays a key role in education now, and kids love social media and they learn from it. So the modern classroom provides an educational learning experience where students can engage and get vital information in a short period of time and then move on to something new. So within this structure, students are rewarded with new learning activities at each station, which they all look forward to.
I really love this concept of new learning, right? Like you said, quick, straight to the point, has to be concise, has to be clear so that students continue to engage with it. And I think you said it really, really nicely in the beginning of that, you want to provide systems and routines that are clear, that are easy to follow, and then lots of modeling, and practice, right? I love the thing that you also pointed out of self-check, right? Like where students can check their progress to see how they're doing. I love to hear that kindergartners are doing that now, because I know I can hear now some people say, well, how do you ensure that your students are not cheating when it comes to checking progress, right? How do you have those conversations with students about making sure that they have true understanding and not just cheating? Does that make sense, Saenovia, what I'm asking?
Yes, it does. It makes a lot of sense. Again, we go back to that discussion where before we transition over into a new subject area, the students are able to share out their learning experience at each table. And it's amazing to see and hear students explaining what they learned, not just saying, if me as a teacher, me asking them, well, what did you learn what did you learn today? Oh, I learned my ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. They don't do that. In the beginning, they did do that, but with constant reminders of being able to explain what they learned and why they are learning. We go over that every single day, and we have that discussion at the end of every period, so that they can share out what they're learning with me. They're letting themselves know that, hey, in our classroom, we have something called a learning brain, and they're excited about the learning brain. And then they're like, oh, I'm getting a learning brain, because every time they're able to share what they're learning, they get these brains that are placed into a basket. And we try to fill that basket within the room. And then they're learning, sharing what they're learning with their peers too as well. And you'll if you were in the classroom, you can see students and hear students say, oh yeah, I was working on that too. I learned that too. So it's amazing to see.
Oh, that's so fascinating how you created this joy of learning, right? Of just this, there's a learning brain, there's a motivation to continue sharing what they are learning with each other. And I'm sure that conversations outside of the classroom is also just as fruitful and impactful, especially with their families and even friends outside of the classroom too, right? Of being like, oh, I actually learned this in class, and able to explain exactly what the skills and concepts are that they're learning. And I think that's one of my favorite things about this model too, is that kids really do have a better understanding of what they're learning rather than giving very vague answers, right? How did you come up with the super ask me student? Because I think that that's so fascinating that you have different tiers, right? You have your ask me students, and then if your ask me students don't know, then you have your super ask me. How did you create that? Because I don't think I've heard of that before. That's just really cool.
Oh, thank you. Well, as you know, within a classroom, there are different levels of learners. So based off of that and different types of assessments and seeing where that specific student was, that's how I came up with that idea, because that student was so advanced and gifted. She's a very gifted student. So based on that, in order to advance her and help her to thrive and grow her, I decided to say, hey, here's a super Ask Me student. So that's how I came up with that idea.
It's such a great way to continue having conversations about the skills and the concepts that we're learning in class, right? Especially for that student who's advanced and gifted. That's kind of how I had conversations with my students who are more advanced and gifted, right? It's like, hey, if you can teach someone else, then you've really mastered this skill. Because I do think it's all about like, how do we perceive the information that we're taking in, and how can we get someone else to understand this thing that we just know? And so if you can have those conversations and get your peers to understand, it's just like chef's kiss, beautiful. So I really thank you for sharing that. I really love that. And so, we're talking about mastery. We're talking about your student who is gifted, more advanced, and also talking about the students who are on pace, right? Being able to help students who are behind pace. What does mastery look like in your classroom?
So mastery within the classroom, again, students are assessed on given like formative assessments. They're given, I'm observing them as well. So those students have to be able to master whatever the concept is that they are learning. So with that being said, there are different stations that I have within my group, which are like testing stations. And those students are able to go to those testing stations after like a small group. And they are assessed on whatever the standard that was being taught. So the mastery is achieved when the students can confidently and independently apply the skills and concepts they've learned. So this means that they're not only understanding the material, but they can also explain it to myself, they can explain it to others, and use various contexts. So at the end of each subject block, before, like I said, we move on to a subject area, we have the class brief discussion. So the students are able to share on specifics on what they learned, and then their explanations and that are usually they're typically detailed. And again, they love sharing them out. So mastery is also, like I said, assessed through those observations, student self-assessments. With their rubrics, we go over, did you meet this? Were you able to do this? And students are encouraged to take ownership of their learning. And they set goals, we set goals, and we track progress. So when a student demonstrates mastery, it's celebrated, reinforcing the importance of the hard work and the perseverance that they're putting forth in the classroom.
And it just seems like you're getting a lot of one-on-one time or small group setting, like you said, with your students, right? And really able to figure out what their needs are as far as their skills that they're learning in class. That's what it's sounding like, right? You're doing a lot of check-ins verbally. And this is something too that because I've never taught kindergartners before. Let me backtrack. I did teach kindergarten, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. This is wild. Because there's, they're still learning their letters, they're still learning their numbers. And so I'm guessing with the mastery checks, it is a lot of have conversations, right, with students, and then having lots of, let's go over this rubric together. Let's go over what this mastery check is saying, right? So I really love this push too that you have of, no, I have conversations, whole group, small group, individuals with students to really figure out if they can apply the knowledge that they're learning. So I really appreciate that.
Hey there, listeners. This is Zach with some announcements and reminders for you. Do you ever wonder how to meet all of your learners' needs at once? That's natural. Every student needs different things, and it's a challenge for any teacher to provide them all at once. Fortunately, there are classroom-tested steps you can take to help all your students achieve their true potential. We have an Ed webinar coming up where you can discover evidence-based techniques that you can use right away to keep each of your students appropriately challenged and appropriately supported every day. Former teacher and Modern Classrooms project co-founder Rob Barnett will explain using insights from his new book, Meet Every Learner's Needs, as well as the lessons he has learned from empowering thousands of educators worldwide on Tuesday, February 4th at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can join Beth Benavides, Jackie Durr, and Dustin Tatro, distinguished Modern Classrooms educators and previous podcast guests, for a live webinar on Tuesday, February 4th at 6 p.m. Eastern, where they'll share their expertise in transforming an ELA classroom into a dynamic, personalized learning environment. Check out the show notes for links and registration details. And now let's get back into it with Tony Rose and Saenovia.
Okay. So, Saenovia, I know there was something else that you said about stamina. And I love this reminder as well for our listeners that we do want to build up stamina, even if it's, middle school or high school students. We want to build up the stamina. And so, especially when it comes to, I taught English. And so especially when it comes to reading, right? I just can't say the first day we're going to read for 20 minutes independently, have fun. And so I really like that you reminded me that in the beginning, I started out with 5 minutes. It was just 5 minutes. And then we moved up to 7 minutes maybe, and then to 10 minutes. And now you're saying that you have little kindergartners who can focus for 20 minutes because that is something that you have built up. So it wasn't just an expectation from day one that students can stay focused and engaged in the content for 15 minutes in the beginning. And so I think I just wanted again to repeat that and elevate that part as well, because I know sometimes when we're implementing new structures in the classroom, we want our students to get it right away. Some do, some don't, but we want to be able to build up that stamina, like you said. So I just wanted to, again, say that just as a reminder that we need more time. We need more time. Okay. So now, how have your observations and conversations from stakeholders been different since you've implemented the model? Has there been a change? Has it been pretty similar? What are your thoughts on this?
So since implementing the Modern Classroom project model, I noticed a significant shift in the way that they view and interact with the classroom. The parents, administrators, and fellow teachers, my colleagues have been impressed by the level of student engagement and independence. So during classroom visits, and then there are people that want to come to the classrooms because they're hearing so many great things about what's taking place within the classroom. So during the classroom visits, my students have been able to articulate what they've been working on and then explain to the classroom, explain to the guests the classroom design, which I'm impressed. So when I have someone in my classroom visiting and they're telling me, your students, they were able to explain to me this, and they were also explain to me their STEM project that they were working on. So I was really, it's really a wonderful feeling. It leads to positive feedback and support, not only from the school, but within the school community and outside of the community as well, because it's being heard. And so stakeholders have also remarked on the improved focus and confidence in my students, which has been a rewarding experience for me to see, to the point to where they want to implement this in the high school as well. So I've had a few parents come to the classroom, and I was able to explain to them the design. And some of the parents even sat in the classroom as volunteers and indicated how much they loved the setup. And they appreciated that it wasn't the traditional classroom setup that they were used to. And they loved the fact that the students were not just sitting in their chairs for the entire day.
Oh, that's so great to hear from families and caregivers and parents, right? Are they able to just come in any time to sit in, or is that more of they got to sign up and do all the things to volunteer to sit in? How does that work?
Well, I'm always letting my parents know that, they're important. They're an important part of students' learning, and they're always welcome to come into the classroom. They just let me know that they're coming in, and then there's also a process before they come into the school. But as long as they let me know, and I give a heads up to the principal, and they go through those proper steps, they're more than welcome to come into the classroom. So, and I appreciate it, and the students love it too. They love visitors.
Yeah, I bet. I know when I was teaching middle school, right, I always had visitors, and my students loved having the visitors around. And I really love this concept too of, again, just parents and families and caregivers coming in and seeing the model in action, because it's sometimes really hard to articulate exactly what the model can do, and then you go in there and notice and see it in action, and you're like, oh, that's what you're talking about. This actually makes so much more sense now. So I'm really glad to hear that your families are coming in wanting to see how this model works, as opposed to not being supportive of it. So I really thank you for sharing that. And then as far as your colleagues, are they also coming in to watch you, to see how you do it, to kind of have a better understanding of how the model works?
Yes, I have a few colleagues that are, a couple that have already implemented the design within their own classroom. And then there's another colleague that is interested in the model, and she's trying to be a part of the course. So they are in love with the idea. Any type of PD that we have had recently on small groups, I'm sharing the Modern Classroom project with them. So there is a huge interest for it, and teachers are wanting to be a part of it.
Do you get to interact with your colleagues who are implementing the model? Like, do you get to plan with them, have conversations about what works well, what doesn't work well?
Yes, all the time. And then even in my spare time, like sometimes on my planning periods, I'll even go into the classroom and assist in any way that I can. And even ideas that they might have that I like, I would use that within my own classroom as well.
Oh, that's so good to hear. That is so good to hear, because I always say it's just so much better with community. It's so much better to do things with one or two people at least, right? And so that's really, really good to hear. I'm glad that that's happening. And I hope that this also spreads to high school, right? Because I think our high school babies definitely need something like this too. And so I'm curious, Saenovia, how has this model impacted your own teaching and learning practices, as well as your mental health? Because we've heard time and time again, just positive things about implementing this model and how teachers can now just go home and not really have to worry about much because everything is planned out.
Yeah, so as an educator, educators wear multiple hats, many hats, as well as we have our lives outside of the classroom. So with this modern classroom project, it has had a profound impact on my teaching practices. It's allowed me to personalize learning for each student, making the instruction more effective and more meaningful, explicit. I've become more intentional in my planning and delivery, which has resulted in better student outcomes. And then on a personal level, the model has positively affected my mental health because teaching can be stressful. So the structured routines in the self-paced learning environment have reduced stress and allowed me to focus on what matters most, which is my student growth. So seeing my students succeed and enjoy learning has been incredibly fulfilling and motivating for me.
Yes, yes, yes. I think, with the planning and delivery, like you said, intentional, right? It has to be intentional and it has to be meaningful for both parties, not just for students, but also for teachers. And that just makes it a lot more joyful when it comes to teaching and learning. So thank you for naming that. And just like you said, teaching can be stressful. Teaching is stressful. There's no going around it, right? And being able to implement a model like this where that your students are taken care of regardless, right? If you're absent, the teaching continues and the learning continues. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways for me was that, every educator wants to do well for each student, right? And sometimes that can be really overwhelming thinking about how you can do that and also be okay mentally and emotionally. And so it's really great to hear you say that it's allowed you to just be more intentional with your work, be more meaningful, and then also just to focus on the most important things. And because again, as educators, we want to focus on all the things. So it really does. This model really allows you to hone in on all of the important things and the actual important things, not all of it, like the actual things that you want kids to feel successful in and find joy in, right? And so I really appreciate you naming that and sharing that with us. And so I've only been able to observe one kindergarten class, I believe, and I remember being so happy watching students be self-directed learners, like you said, independent learners, right? They knew where they're supposed to go. They knew what they're supposed to be doing, and it's all different tasks, like you said. And to be able to have that engagement is just it brings me so much hope to what the future or what education can be, right? And so I think for you, when you first started implementing it, you said like it took the students a month to kind of get it, right? And I'm sure you've had to do a couple of redirects and repeats, but was there ever a time where you just like took a step back and like watch the classroom, all of your students kind of do their thing and just be like, wow, this is cool?
Yes, pretty much like all the time, I'm reflecting on like what the students have accomplished within the classroom. It's an amazing experience for anyone, like any guest that comes inside the classroom, any teacher, educator that is implementing this design within their own classroom. So often I take a time to look back and say, wow. And anytime that I am out of the classroom, the students are self-sufficient. They can run the classroom all by themselves, and even give the substitute directive on what it is that they need to be doing, just in case that there's a confusion and any notes that I have left. And then I have had substitute teachers tell me, wow, your class was amazing. Like they just operated they knew exactly what to do.
Okay, kindergartners are 6 years old, right, Saenovia?
5.
5. These 5-year-olds are telling an adult, like, actually, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Like, that to me is the cutest. And that's good to hear, too, that your substitutes say what my substitutes have said about mine, too. Just like, no, I want to continue subbing your class because students just know what to do. And those are 5-year-olds. That's really dope.
Yeah, I'm always told by like it's any type of stakeholder administrative, like if they can do it, it can be done at a higher level as well. So
Yeah. And that's the thing, too, that we say all the time. Because, Kareem and Rob our co-founders started out in high school, right? And so they're like, oh, yeah, this could definitely happen in high school. But they didn't know how it could look in middle school. And so then my group of teachers got recruited. We were all middle school, first time implementing in a middle school classroom. And we like crushed it. We were like, oh, this is great. And so then the next challenge was like, okay, well, how do we get this into elementary schools? And then when I tell you, kindergarten teachers and pre-K teachers have just I don't know, embraced it and made it their own. So to see 4 and 5-year-olds doing this and being self-directed learners already, like I can't even imagine how this would be if they've had this type of learning until they graduated from college. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like the learning is just that much more fun and that much more intentional and that much more engaging for all of our learners. So that's, oh my gosh, how cool is that? Okay, so I'm sure we have some folks who are like, I really love this model. I teach the younger kids, the littles, and I know that I still have some hesitations, right? I still don't know how one thing or this thing could potentially work. So coming from you who've implemented, it started at like the 2023, you said, right? Like you got into 2023 and then you went to you did the course and you were also planning, which I think is so lovely. What are 1 to 2 things to keep in mind when implementing this type of learning of blended self-paced and mastery-based learning in a kindergarten classroom?
Okay, so again, like I mentioned before, you want to make sure that you start small. Don't be afraid of like any mistakes that you make. I was told once that in order to master something, in order to master it, you have to mess it up. So you want to make sure that you start small. So you want to begin with a few key routines and then gradually introduce more as students become comfortable. So this helps to avoid any type of avoid overwhelming your students, your young learners, and then allows them to build confidence in their abilities. And then the second way is to keep it engaging. So you're going to use a variety of activities, visual aids, and hands-on materials to keep students interested and motivated. And you want to incorporate play and creativity in lessons and rewards within those lessons as well. And it can make the learning more enjoyable and effective for young children. And I know with the videos that I create within this project, I remember when my students first saw me on one of the videos and they said, "Oh, Mrs. Smith, you're famous." And it made me laugh, but it made them more engaged and wanting to know more, and it gave them an interest in what was taking place right in front of them.
Ah, this is so good. This is so good. You reminded me of a book by Adam Grant that I was just listening to where he really said, I forget the title, but he really does say like exactly what you said. For you to master it, you have to mess it up. And people who actually are not afraid to make mistakes have like a better chance of just feeling more successful later on in life, right? Because they understand that failure does not define them. It is just part of the process to completely understand what it is that you're trying to do. And so I really love this whole concept that you said you have to mess it up to master it. And that's okay. It's giving permission. It's giving, it's just giving permission to just mess it up. It's totally okay. Perfectionism is not a thing. And I think starting out with, with the 5-year-olds, the babies, with that mindset, just beautiful, right? Beautiful. And when you said incorporating play, this I think is probably the most important thing when it comes to learning, right? Is that you do have to play. Let's play, let's play, let's play. Let's incorporate some fun and play into the learning tasks that we're doing. And I think elementary school itself does a really good job of incorporating play. But for some reason, when we shift to middle school and high school, it's like, play, what is that? And I just also want to remind our listeners and our secondary educators, play is actually really important. So figure out a way to incorporate play into the learning tasks that's happening in the classroom. So these are great reminders. Mess it up, y'all. Continue to mess it up. You as an adult also just mess it up. And this is a new-ish model, right, for a lot of people. And so you're going to mess up, and that's okay. That just means you're getting closer to mastering how to implement the model with the group of kids that you have. And so I love that so much. Thank you, Saenovia, for that. So what do you hope to see in the future, and what goals do you have? This could be MCP based, it could be personal based, like whatever you want to share with our listeners.
So for me, in the future, I hope to see the model adopted more widely across all grade levels in the school. And then my goal is to continue refining my teaching practices and finding new ways to engage and support my students. I'm on that path of a distinguished modern classroom educator and becoming a mentor for those educators that are in need of different ideas and supports and ways to engage their students in learning. I also aim to share my experience and insight with other educators, helping them implement this. And then ultimately, I want to create a learning environment where all my students can thrive and reach their full potential.
Yes. Congratulations also with the DMCE part. And we would love to have you as a mentor, because we need more kindergarten teachers as mentors so that our folks can just see like, oh yeah, this is so possible. Just because it was founded or started in high school classrooms does not necessarily mean our babies cannot do it, right? And so I think, again, educators like you are so passionate, who are so excited to share new knowledge and new ideas. We would be so honored to have you into our community. And so, okay, before we do anything else, is there anything else that you want to add on that you haven't had a chance to chime in and say?
Oh, thank you so much for everything. This is a wonderful experience. I'm looking forward to the new system. It's a progress monitoring tracking system that the Modern Classroom is implementing. I think it's called Wavio. I am in sessions to learn more about that. And I know they have like a session coming up on January 22nd in a couple of days to chime in on and learn more about it for those that are a part of the Modern Classroom, as well as show interest in it and to use it within their own classroom. I believe it's called Wavio.
Yeah, I'm so excited about that too, because I'm curious to see how you would utilize it in your kindergarten class and how your kids could use it as well.
I think that they'll do wonderful with it, because it's a way that they can track their progress monitoring, since they are familiar with like Google Classroom and how to operate it. That's just another avenue or part of technology that they can learn and explore too as well. And I love it as far as what I'm seeing from it. It puts even more ease on me, because right now I have a manual progress monitoring tracker within the classroom, where students, they can see their data boards. So I think that this will be a wonderful tool, and it'll save time as far as like with paperwork, what I have to do to update those boards and things like that. So I'm looking forward to learning more about it and exploring it.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear how that goes for your classes as well and what your students think of it. And I think I'm more shocked and impressed that you said that 5-year-olds are used to Google Classroom, because I was like, whoa, Google Classroom. Okay. That's really dope. That's really, really cool. Okay. Well, you got to keep me posted on how Wavio goes, because I know you're doing the marketing for us, saying that, hey, it's coming up. This is great. And I hope to see you in more community spaces as well, so that we can continue, again, elevating your experiences and your stories and your expertise with our community. And so, Saenovia, how can our listeners connect with you if they have any questions?
Listeners can connect with me through my email, the219teacher@gmail.com. And I'm always happy to share ideas, answer any questions, and collaborate with fellow educators. And then I'm also a part of the Modern Classroom community.
Yes, beautiful. Okay. Well, with that being said, this was a great conversation. A first-time podcast guest, Saenovia. You did really, really great. So thank you again. Yeah. It can be really nerve-wracking, right? But I hope that this was a good experience for you.
It was amazing. Thank you so much. And I appreciate everything. And you've been wonderful walking and guiding me through this too as well. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and expertise with us, Saenovia, once again. Listeners, remember you can always email us at podcast@modernclassrooms.org, and you can find the show notes for this article at podcast.modernclassrooms.org. We'll have this episode's video uploaded on Modern Classroom's YouTube channel and transcript uploaded by Friday, so be sure to check back to access those. Also, we are asking our listeners to leave a review if this podcast has been helpful in supporting you to create a human-centered learning environment through a blended, self-paced, mastery-based model. It does help other folks find it. Thank you all for listening. Have a great week, and we'll be back next Sunday. Saenovia, you're a gem. I'm so excited to have been connected with you.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find links to topics and tools we discussed in our show notes for this episode. And remember, you can learn more about our work at www.modernclassrooms.org, and you can learn the essentials of our model through our free course at learn.modernclassrooms.org. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at modernclassproj, that's Proj. We are so appreciative of all you do for students and schools. Have a great week, and we'll be back next Sunday with another episode of the Modern Classrooms Project podcast.